Welcome to the third webinar in the Child Sexual Abuse Prevention Education series. This third webinar is entitled Implementing a Trauma-Informed Approach to Teaching Sexual Abuse Education. My name is Amber Ernst. I am with the School Counseling Section at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. I am joined by Portia Thorpe.
I'm Portia Thorpe, and I work at the Child Center, which is located in Wentzville, and we are a CAC. And there I do prevention education. I'm the supervisor of our prevention team that goes into the schools and out in the community to provide prevention education programs.
And we are representatives of the Education Subcommittee of the Task Force for the Prevention of Sexual Abuse Education. So the revised statute that you see on the screen starts going into effect this school year of 2020 to 2021. And it says that each school district shall provide trauma-informed, developmentally appropriate sexual abuse training to students in all grades not lower than 6th grade. We want to make sure that you have the full background of this law and what it means before we dive a little bit deeper into this part of the training. School districts must include these following 4 points in the trainings. So instruction providing students with knowledge and tools to recognize sexual abuse, instruction providing students with knowledge and tools to report an incident of sexual abuse, actions that a student who is a victim of sexual abuse could take to obtain assistance and intervention, and lastly, available resources for students affected by sexual abuse. So let's move on to exactly kind of what that looks like for your school districts. So the law did also state that DESE, working with the Task Force for Prevention of Sexual Abuse of Children, collaborate together to form a guidance document that schools can use to help implement the required parts of this law. So this, on your screen, you can see a picture of the front of the document and a link to where you will find those materials. This is a comprehensive guidance document that was worked on for many months and had quite a few organizations help in development. And we're going to look at a few of those pieces today. It's packed with information, resources, and this will get you all of the things you need to help implement that law. Our learning objectives for just this third part in the series, we're really going to dive deep into what does it mean to provide trauma-informed sexual abuse education, resources that are available for school staff to be trauma-informed, how to handle disclosures, which is extremely important for trauma-informed, and then also your legal responsibilities as a mandated reporter in the state of Missouri. What does it mean to be trauma-informed and have that as part of your sexual abuse education? So the biggest part is ensuring a safe environment in which children are more likely to disclose abuse or neglect. Now let's talk about some of those pieces. One of the most important considerations here is to do no harm. A trauma-informed approach recognizes that many students have experienced some form of abuse, and we'll dive into those statistics here in just a minute. But given those statistics, teachers should assume that students in every classroom have been affected by sexual abuse. Administrators should also assume that survivors will be required to teach this content to their students. A huge part is preventing unintentional re-traumatization of those who have experienced sexual abuse. It is essential that schools offer education, planning, and staff training with community organizations, social workers, or psychologists before delivering education. This training is critical and necessary for the supporting students who may be triggered or who may disclose abuse as a result of education. Staff support may also be needed for those who are triggered when delivering education. Let's go ahead and look at some of those statistics. So before students even turn 18, and you can see right here on the screen, this is a great depiction of some of those recent statistics. 1 in 4 girls experience some form of sexual abuse, and 1 in 6 boys experience some form of sexual abuse. So thinking in terms of class sizes, who you're reaching in schools, that's a huge, significant population in our school districts. And then also putting that in perspective, 90% of victims know their abuser. we wanted to touch on a little bit that a number of reasons that boys might tend to underreport is including that they may fear that they are seen as weak, and the perpetrator is, if it's a male, they may also fear for the gay labeling. 90% or more, again, of all sexual molestation is committed by someone their child knows or trusts. A lot of prevention education programs kind of refer to those as the 3 L's. So we teach that in our prevention education programs. The abuser is someone that the child likes, loves, or lives with, or even is with in the community, as far as that goes.
And Amber, I did want to add, 40% of children who are sexually abused are not only abused by adults, but this can be an older child or a child of their age as well. So also to take that into consideration when we are providing these programs, that not only could there be a victim, a survivor, but there also could be a child that's perpetrating on another child as well.
That's a great point, and especially when we're thinking about viewing this lens for prevention education in schools, really for students to understand where all those surroundings are. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. Thanks, Portia.
Yes.
Really diving deep again into those teaching considerations for being trauma informed. These are really highlighted, not only the ones that we're going to list on the screen here, but plenty more in addition to this are in pages 25 and 26 of the guidance document. But let's look at a few of these as an overview and then also in detail. So some important things to note when delivering the prevention education curriculums is to not victim blame. And that can be done in a lot of different ways, but making sure it's not done before, during, or after the presentations that you're doing with students. Language considerations, again, not using blaming language, and we're going to show examples of that in just a minute. Teaching healthy boundaries is incredibly important, and then also using anatomically correct names for body parts.
So this is a chart that I find really helpful. Me and my team, we do a lot of prevention programs, and over the years that we've been doing these programs, we learn something new every day. But this is a chart that will show you just some language to be aware of. I know in the previous slide, we talked about not victim blaming. So language to avoid, don't let someone hurt you. Obviously, if a child has been abused, depending on the situation, they might feel that they've done something wrong. They might feel like they didn't do something right. So telling the child, don't let someone do that to you or don't let someone hurt you, can make that child feel like they did do something wrong when really it's not their fault. So using those words, it's not your fault, is very helpful for a child to hear. Another one that I like, that I really have been focusing on, is not saying have to or you should tell an adult, because if this has been happening to that child for a long time or even a short period of time, if they haven't told a trusted adult yet, maybe they didn't realize that this was something they needed to tell. Maybe that trusted adult has threatened them, so they were afraid to tell. And so now by using those words, have to or you should tell a trusted adult, really emphasizes that they didn't do something correct, when really, again, it's not that child's fault. But using those words, can tell an adult, because that allows the child, even if it happened years ago, if it's happening right now, if it's going to happen in the future, they can tell a trusted adult. And really our prevention programs are there to empower a child to have a voice, to speak up, to tell a trusted adult. So using that word can is just a simple change that can empower a child to tell at any time. Another one that we really focus on is not saying good touch, bad touch. To a child, a touch can be good or bad. So we don't want to tell that child what's a good touch and what's a bad touch. Instead, using helpful words like appropriate or inappropriate. With our programming, especially for the younger kids, we do explain that our private body parts are any part of our body that's covered up with a swimsuit. So when teaching a program, you can easily tell a child, if someone's touching under our swimsuit, that might be an inappropriate touch, or a safe or unsafe touch. Those are words that a child will be able to recognize no matter what, if it felt good to them or if it felt bad. But we don't want to tell a child what feels good to them or what is bad to them, because everyone is different, and really that inappropriate touch could feel good to that child. So again, we don't want to put any blame on the child for how they felt in that moment. If they were comfortable with that or uncomfortable, that's something different. So again, using those words, appropriate, inappropriate, or safe or unsafe, would be a better way to approach those types of touches that we do want to avoid if a child is not asking for help or needing help from a trusted adult. So this talks about the trauma-informed resources for school staff. I think this is really important. I think a lot of training has to go into being able to provide these programs. As Amber said earlier in this presentation, we potentially could have survivors in the room, victims in the room, whether that's the person being trained or the child receiving that prevention program. So I think it's really important that all agencies are trained in child sexual abuse prevention programs. Not necessarily doing the programs, but being educated to know what's going to happen once you have these programs in your school. Listed below is a link for your local CACs. I do work for a CAC, and we provide these prevention programs in the schools. So this would be a good resource. Just starting here, trying to know what you can do. We want to make sure that you feel comfortable if you are the ones providing the training and that you're properly trained. Some CACs, like I said, will be able to provide this training for you, or even other agencies in the area that would be able to provide these programs for you who do have staff that are trained to do these programs. This isn't just a come in, we're going to teach you the curriculum and you go and do it. There's a lot of other training that goes into it as well. But if you are having an outside agency come in to do those programs, again, it's important to have your staff trained. That means once that agency or outside person comes in to do those programs, children can disclose whenever they're comfortable. So just because I come in and do a program on Monday doesn't mean that child's going to disclose to me. That's why it's important for staff to be trained to know how to handle a disclosure from a child, what to do to help that child, and being careful about the things that we're saying and the way we're reacting to that. So that's really important too. So every single year that my team goes in to do those programs, 1, we're trained. 2, we like to train the people who are going to be there for the child consistently. That might be people in the school. Also parents. It's important that parents are trained too. We actually send a parent letter home explaining the program that we're going to provide so that mom or dad or that trusted adult or caregiver can follow up with that conversation. This is a lesson that it doesn't have to be scary, and it's not scary to teach it. But if this is something that has never been introduced in the school, parents might say, why is this happening? Who is this for? Why are we teaching the students this? And really, this sexual abuse prevention training is taught just like any other safety rule that you would teach a child consistently in the school. So making sure that you have resources for parents, but resources for teachers, counselors, and any other school professional that would be there with that child to help the child before and after the programs.
Gosh, I think that ties very well in with this portion. That was excellent. Sometimes we tend to forget that it's more than just those who teach. It's anyone that's going to handle disclosures. So let's take a little bit of a deeper look into your role as a mandated reporter. So you can see that entire statute on the screen, and we're going to pick apart some of these pieces that are really important for you to know. So as a mandated reporter, reasonable cause to suspect is one of the things you're going to need to look for. And you need to immediately report to the division, and that kind of depends on your situation, who that would be that you would tell. No internal investigation shall be initiated until a report has been made. And then abuse is not limited to abuse inflicted by a person responsible for the child's care, custody, or control even. And a couple more notes on this as well. Mandated reporters are legally required to report information 24/7, 365 days a year. And this doesn't just stop when your work day ends. This is even after you clock out of work. So kind of even as a community member, you might hear these disclosures in a variety of settings, but this is important to know the law that actually goes with it. And mandated reporters must make a report even if they received information about child abuse or neglect from a third party. And then it will be up to, after the information is received, where it goes. Portia, is there anything you wanted to add to this?
So my big thing with this slide that really stands out to me and that I really like to emphasize when I talk about this to mandated reporters is that calls should be made immediately. Mm-hmm. Any place of employment should have a plan put in place so that if you have to make that hotline call, you can do it right then and there. Just think, if you are doing something throughout the day and someone says, hey, how was your day? What'd you do today? You're probably not going to give them all of the details. Whereas if they would have asked you in that moment, you could have given them a lot of details that happened. So that's the same with this abuse. Anytime a child discloses any abuse or neglect, it's important to make that call immediately. I do this training a lot for teachers and counselors, and I tell them, think if you wait until the end of your day, that child could be going home to that potential perpetrator. And so we want to do what we can as mandated reporters to make sure that we are doing what we can to protect those children. So I would say that, and the last bolded part, it doesn't have to be an adult. Like I said earlier, right. If there is another child abusing another child, that's still something that we as mandated reporters need to hotline.
That's a great point.
So let's talk about the House Bill 505. This is something that really kind of protects mandated reporters. And so after talking about our role as a mandated reporter, I think it's great to follow up with this. That's really any time that you feel you need to make a hotline based on your gut feeling, based on what a child has disclosed to you, that you have the right to do that. That does not give anyone else the right to say, no, you don't need to hotline that. Anytime you have that gut feeling that something's not right, things aren't adding up, based on a disclosure that a child did tell you, you can make that hotline call. You can't get in trouble at your place of employment for doing so because you are a mandated reporter once you clock in and even off duty. This last bolded piece is immediate and unrestricted access to communications technology, immediate report, temporarily relieved from other work duties. Like I said at the beginning, or at the other slide, you should be able to make that call right then and there. If you have a class, someone should be able to come in and cover for you so that you can go make that hotline call, or you can do it online as well. But you should have access to a phone, a computer, internet access to make that call immediately. So again, I always tell my teachers and counselors at the beginning of the school year, figure out what that plan is now. You don't want to wait until something happens and everyone's kind of running around trying to figure that out. I think as a mandated reporter, you have to take that initiative to ask what is going to be the plan if this happens. Not saying that it's going to, but you want to be more prepared for when it does happen than not know exactly what you need to do and calling different people or feeling bad for calling someone to cover your class. make sure you have something put in place. I think that that's the most important thing that we could do to help us prepare for any type of abuse or neglect disclosure from a child, or even if we suspect it. I think that that's really important.
Wow, I love that tip that you gave. That's really great for anyone that's working in an educational setting. So when listening or handling disclosures, I-CARE is a really helpful acronym. It's standing for information, calm, assure, report, and educate. And then we're going to further break down what each of those parts mean.
So information, your role as a mandated reporter is not to investigate and get all of the details. I know as humans, we like to know more information. We like to be really helpful. But when it comes to a child's disclosure in your role as a mandated reporter, all you need to do is gather that information. If a child is disclosing something to you, they're going to tell you what they're comfortable telling you. And your job is at that point just to listen. Listen and gather the information that they're telling you. One of the things I do like to tell mandated reporters is that if you feel like you need to write something down because this child is telling you a lot of information, tell that child, say, I'm going to write some of these things down because I want to make sure that I don't miss anything. Let them know what you're doing. Gather the information that the child is telling you. You don't have to ask, did a sibling see this? Or who else was at home with you? Or where did this happen? You don't need to know all of those things. If a child wants you to know, they are going to tell you. Let the child dictate the flow of the conversation. That disclosure is not yours to get, but for a child to give it to you. So make sure we're gathering that information, and any information that you don't have that you think you might need, don't worry about it at that moment. If you need more information, the information will be figured out by someone whose job it is to investigate that. But don't feel like you have to have all of the answers right then and there. Another important thing when gathering that information, try your hardest not to make that child repeat the disclosure to you again, and especially to others. It's not our role as a mandated reporter to have a child talk to us and then talk to someone else, because that's re-traumatizing that child by reliving that moment over and over and over again. So really, as a mandated reporter, just listen and gather that information that the child is telling you. Now, due to COVID, things kind of look different. If we're doing a tele-education situation, we might have to look for different things, and we might have to ask some questions because we aren't with that child every day. So if you are virtual with the child, you might have to ask a little bit more questions, or you might have to pay attention more. That's one of the big things with COVID and doing the virtual learning is that we've told mandated reporters, you might have to look more when you're Zooming with that child, or when you are on Google Meets with that child, whatever platform you're using, to make sure that that child is safe, to make sure that they're in a safe environment. Also the demeanor of the child as well. So this is information that the child might not tell you, but things that you might be able to see virtually. And then C stands for calm. Really, as mandated reporters and adults, we have to remain calm for that child. If we start to get upset, if we start to get mad, that child might feel like they've done something wrong, or they might feel like we can't handle this, so I'm going to stop talking. They might feel like they need to take it back because they might feel like they're going to get in trouble. And really, we don't want to make the child feel like that at all. Just remaining calm, being supportive to that child. And again, we've said this earlier, not using blaming language. We don't want to say anything that can be discouraging to that child, but also we don't want to say anything that could be discouraging to that alleged perpetrator. because the statistic earlier was 90% of the time that child likes, loves, or lives with, or is around that person a lot. So potentially that perpetrator could be a loved one. So we don't want to say anything hurtful or anything negative to where it might change that child's demeanor and wanting to disclose or tell us more information or even feel comfortable talking to us about this. Most of the time that mandated reporters get a disclosure from a child, it's that child's first time telling. Whether they're telling on purpose or they're telling on accident, they felt safe enough to disclose this information to you. So we want to make sure that we can have a calm demeanor while they're telling us something very traumatizing that they've been through. And then A stands for assure. We want to tell the child things that we know 100%. So if you don't know something for certain, don't tell that child. This child that has been abused or has been neglected has already been lied to by a trusted adult in their life. So we don't want to be that other trusted adult that told them something and maybe that wasn't something that happened. For example, when people make hotline calls, they might say, now someone's going to come out and talk to you. But if no one comes out to talk to that child and they're waiting around, now we're another person that's lied to them. Or we don't want to tell them this is never going to happen to you again, because realistically, we can't be with that child 100% of the time to make sure that that never happens to that child again. So we want to assure them by saying things that we know 100%, and we want to stay on the positive side of things. So making sure that that child who just disclosed to you, making sure you tell them that they're brave. Again, if a child is disclosing to you, it's probably their first time disclosing this information. So that is really brave of a child to come to an adult to let them know that this is happening or that this has happened. You also might want to tell that child, you're doing the right thing by telling me what happened. Being honest with that child as well, telling them, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I will help in any way that I can. I will make sure to tell you any information that I find out that I can tell you to support you, to help you. Even telling that child that I'm proud of you. Telling that child that you're proud that they were comfortable to come and tell you could mean the world to that child. Because again, that child has been taken advantage of and that child has been lied to by someone that they probably love or trust. So making sure that we reassure that child during this process as well. And then reporting. Reporting is so important. If you don't know all the details or if you are unsure, just make the hotline call. The hotline call, it has the number up there, the 1-800 number, 1-800-392-3738. I tell all my mandated reporters to put this in their cell phones. Put it in your cell phone. You should have it written down somewhere close to your workspace, but also they have an online option. This is really helpful for a lot of teachers or counselors that are doing virtual lessons. You don't necessarily have to get on your phone to make that call, but you can do it online as well. Whatever is easiest and you have access to, immediate access to, I suggest using that. Either way, the call, if you call this number, if you get online, that's making the report. If we don't report things or if we second guess things, and that cycle of abuse can continue for that child. As a mandated reporter, I suggest calling or getting online to make that call immediately. We might think it's something very little, but we don't always see the big picture and everything. We don't go home with these children every day to know exactly what's happening. So again, if you have that gut feeling that something's not right, things aren't adding up, or based on what a child has disclosed to you, I feel like it's very important that we make this call or get online to report. Failure to report as a mandated reporter can lead to a Class A misdemeanor or loss of licensure or professional status. But again, and I have it in bold, the most important thing if we don't report is that cycle of abuse can continue for that child. And really it can continue for that child, and it might continue to other children as well. So as mandated reporters, it's our job to help protect kids and to make those calls or get online and make that report as well. And then E stands for educate. I think that this is very important as mandated reporters to educate ourselves. I think a lot of sexual abuse prevention trainings are very helpful. Mandated reporter trainings are helpful. Even cursory trainings are very helpful into knowing our role as mandated reporters and knowing how to handle a child's disclosure and knowing how to respond after those sexual abuse prevention programs. Because like I said, if you have outside agencies coming in to do those programs, making sure your staff is educated to handle any disclosure after. Those agencies are not going to be in your school every single day. So making sure you have that support for that child. Also having that support for the family. If we said that 90% of the time a child is abused by someone that they like, love, or live with, that means that this might come as a shock to non-offending parents, caregivers, or other family members. So having some support for the non-offending family members is really important too. I do work at a CAC, so I do see when parents, they don't realize that something has happened and they place a lot of blame on themselves. It's really important that during that healing moment, that the kids heal, but also the parents as well. It just makes the healing process a lot easier for everyone. So making sure that we are educated on how to help a child, how to help families, and even ourselves. Going through this as a mandated reporter and hearing those disclosures aren't going to be easy. So making sure that we educate ourselves, but also find that support for ourselves as well.
All right, so that concludes our third webinar in this really important webinar series. We appreciate you learning more about this topic. Please look for the links to the other parts of this webinar series to find out more information.